look forward to this because just for some reason, all of the other conversations I've had with other parents that have gone through the project, I think all of them have been in Florida. I haven't had a single one yet with anybody in Delaware yet. And
Oh, okay.
I'm not only that, but since I didn't do any of the work for Florida, you were the first person that I've talked to where I actually had the honor of drawing a portrait.
Yeah, Matt's picture
And
is right there on
is
the.
it? I was
Mhm.
wondering where you are on that.
Yeah,
Just
this is
curious.
my little office area here, and that's his picture above my desk. Yeah.
Well, you have been. Um, I can't thank you enough for all of the beautiful things that you have said about the portrait. It was my honor to be able to do it.
Mm,
I don't really believe in accidents. I think there's a reason that I did. I got to do that portrait for you.
yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. And it's funny because I know Kathleen, and she's your
Yeah,
mother-in-law.
yeah,
She's like,
she's doing a lot of really really important
oh,
work, and
she's incredible.
I want to talk to you as well because I haven't had a lot of opportunities to want to talk to parents that have been so involved with actually crafting and getting new legislation passed
Hmm.
on behalf of people with substance use disorders. So I definitely want to touch on that and what that
Okay.
process was like for you, and the kind of amount of time and energy that goes into something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing. I think it's incredible what you've done, and want to give you an opportunity to talk about that. But really, it's important for me to remember that obviously, I think the bulk of the people that watch these videos are email subscribers that
Mm,
will get an email from me saying, "Hey, I have the opportunity to sit down and talk to Mary Beth on National Fentanyl Awareness Day of all days." I want
yeah.
you just to introduce yourself. Let
Okay.
everybody that's watching know a little bit about you and what your involvement was with Intellect.
Okay.
Take it away,
Oh, me? You want me to start? Oh,
please.
come on. I thought you open it up.
No, we're already. This is all going to be a part of
Oh,
it.
jeez.
No, if you would just tell people a little bit about yourself, about Matt, about what, kind of how you came to be a part of the project. I would love to just hear a little bit more about
Okay. Well, my name's MaryBeth Cichocki, and I'm an advocate here in Delaware. I lost my son Matt in January the 3rd of 2015 to an Oxycontin Xanax combo overdose. And I had friends in Pennsylvania where the Into Light project had already been, and a couple of them showed me their pictures. So when I saw that it was coming into Delaware, I really wanted Matt represented in this beautiful project because I really truly believe that we need to put a face and a story along with the narrative because so many people have preconceived notions of people who use drugs, and a lot of them are not very nice. And I saw some of the pictures and I read some of the narratives, and it made me understand the person. It was almost like I knew them. So, like I said, when I saw it was coming to Delaware, I definitely wanted to be involved. So I contacted Teresa, and she asked me if I could get more people involved that I knew because I run a support group in Delaware. So I sent out the email to everybody in my support group. And it was really incredible because probably about 20 people in my support group joined in to the Into Light project. The first day, you write your narrative and then you send in a picture. And I sent in my picture, and Jeremy ended up with it, which was kind of incredible because we kind of have a tie here in Delaware. And the picture that I sent him was not the best, but it was one of the last of Matt standing on the beach. And when I got an email back from Jeremy with the actual portrait he had done, I can tell you, I was like, I just bust out crying almost because he captured Matt, his essence, his eyes, his smile. It was just like I was looking at him as a masterpiece. And, it's funny when I looked at the picture and I thought, my God, what an amazing artist this man is to be able to bring my son to life. And that's truly how I feel, that Matt has been brought to life. The first opening, the grand opening, I can tell you, I had not anticipated the amount of people that were going to show up. And when you tried to walk in, it was jam-packed. I mean, it was shoulder to shoulder. Many of the parents there I knew personally, because like I said, there were a lot in my support group and a lot of people in my community where I advocate. So I went upstairs, and when I made my way into the room, it was really overwhelming for me. There were so many people there. Like I said, I knew their children already. I knew their stories, but to see them in this light, I know none of us wanted to be there. I know I did not want to see Matt's picture and story amongst all those. I'm so sorry. Amongst all those who had died, because that's just not what you want for your child. But seeing everyone with me and knowing that we were all in this together. I'm sorry, let me get my dog. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, I was going to say, you could just have the dog on your lap for this video. People will love that.
Oh my gosh.
I think about doing that with
Barker.
Jasper sometimes, just
Yeah.
because she's so darn cute. But
He's just such a barker,
yeah.
But like I said, I knew most of the people, and I did try to stay as long as I could, but I just found it very overwhelming, and I knew I had to go back. Seeing the tears, hugging everyone that I knew, I just thought the project was more impactful than I could have ever imagined. I thought, okay, we're going to go up into a room. There's going to be portraits and stories on the wall. It'll be okay. And when I walked in there, I felt like I was just that they were there, that I was completely just surrounded by their souls. And I stayed as long as I could. And then I told my husband, I really have to get out of here. I can't do this. It was more, like I said, it hit me harder than I thought it ever would. So we left. And then I guess the next week I went back, and I went back alone. And it was the most incredible experience I have ever had in my life. I was there alone, and I walked in, and I just took my time, and I looked at every portrait, and I read every story. And it was so quiet in that room. I just felt like I was in this place of just honor, of just like I said, I just felt like they were there with me, watching me look at them and look at their smiles and their beautiful eyes and read their stories. I was completely blown away. I was like in this place where I felt like I was walking on holy ground. I really did. I never expected that. And of course, I was tearing up as, I went from picture to picture because, like I said, I knew a lot of people in that room. And then, you get to Matt, my son, and I just had mixed emotions. I was proud that I could share his story and that people could see him as a human being, the beautiful man that he was. But, I really didn't want him there because I wanted him alive. I wanted him to be with me looking at these people and thanking God that he was still here. But that's not what happened. And it was just just a mind-blowing experience. And as I was leaving, there was an older woman coming in, and she had tears in her eyes. And of course, I had tears in my eyes as I was leaving. And she just grabbed my shoulder, and I said, "Is someone here you love?" And she said, "My grandson." And she just started to cry, and I gave her a hug, and I said, I understand. But it was really, it was nothing that I ever expected. I just, it was just so beautiful, so peaceful. The frames, the way the lighting was, it was like you were walking through the doors of heaven
Mm.
and seeing these beautiful people who are no more, and having them look back at you to say, thank you for honoring me. And that's truly how I felt. I felt that, by doing this, we honored their lives. We humanized them. We showed people how beautiful they were, and still are, before the disease took over and changed their personalities.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. I want to share with you that, when I drew Matt's portrait, it was within, 5 or 6 days right after my daughter was born.
Oh.
And I was getting very little sleep. And just kind of when Jasper was napping, I was kind of just going into my studio and drawing little bits as much as I could. And, it was in one of some of the most meaningful times of my life, that I was drawing those portraits. And, I don't, anytime someone tells me like yourself that I captured the essence of, of their child or of their loved one, I just don't feel like I can accept that, and that I really need to give that up to a higher power, and that, someone was working through me, in those moments.
Yes.
And, there was somebody else in that exhibit where I sent them their portrait, and it was one of those things where, like, I knew I could have continued working on the portrait. And that's one of the hardest things for me as an artist, is like when to stop. Sometimes you go too far, and the more you work on it, the less they look like themselves. And I just said pretty early in the process, I just said, I want to stop and send this as it is, because it was to the gentleman's wife, and she got back and said, I think he must have been in the room with you, and it was like this incredible,
Wow.
unbelievable feedback. And it just, I had a feeling that I was like, I feel like there's something here, and I'm going to send it as is, rather than continuing to do this work. And there was so much of those first portraits, because at that point, again, I didn't know I was going to jump into this project as much as I have. I thought I was just doing 10 portraits for the Delaware exhibit, and that was going to be my whole role for Into Light. I had no idea that I was going to hit it off so well with Teresa and Barbara, or find that the work was so incredibly meaningful and impactful to me. But I know Sean feels this way as well. And we did a whole video with artists and writers kind of talking to each other, and we all felt like all you need is one. Like if you write one narrative or you do one portrait, it's like you're just so hooked. You're so hooked into this project as an artist, because it's impossible to find this kind of meaningful work.
Right.
And it really is an honor for me to be able to provide any sort of relief from the horror of losing a child or a husband or whatever. It's
right.
Again, I became a parent right as I started doing these portraits. So they had more of a meaning to me because of that than I think I would have understood had I been doing them a month or two before that. And these conversations that I have, where I'm speaking with people like yourself that not only had to survive losing a child, but who have then done such incredible things to save so many other lives. It blows my mind, and it's helping me stay sober. It's helping me every time. Not that I have many moments where I think about having a drink or using, but these conversations are so impactful and important for my own sobriety journey. And I'm only getting more and more involved in the project. And Teresa has let me know she wants me to be an artist for all of the remaining states. I mean, it blows my mind, and I'm so grateful
Well, you
to be
deserve
able
it.
to.
You deserve it. Absolutely.
I'm really loving. Thank you, and I'm really loving doing the work. It's such an incredible outlet for me, and I'm also loving this. I'm loving these opportunities for, like you said, the project gives families an ability to tell their loved one's story and
Right.
honor their loved one. But what I'm doing with this is also giving you an opportunity to tell more of your story and how losing Matt, going through this project, and other experiences, like what you've done, how you've been changed. I think that's incredibly inspirational. So I really do want to ask you about the legislation that you worked on. If you could tell everybody a little bit about that, how that came to be, specifically what it does, and kind of what that process was like, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have thought about that, have thought about wanting to do something like that, and maybe just don't even know how to get started.
Yeah, well, Matt was gone, I guess, 4 months. And I had, during that time, been let go from the NICU because, after Matt died, my brain broke. I really felt like, oh my God, I was an ICU NICU nurse. And, you think on your feet, you calculate these minute drugs. And I couldn't do that. And all I thought about was, oh my God, if I would harm a baby and put another mother through what I am living through, I couldn't live with myself. So I kept asking, can I come back later, try part-time? And eventually they just said, no, you're done. So I was like, okay, God. I had a magnet on my refrigerator that said, when God closes one door, he opens another. Well, I was in the process of my life, being a registered nurse. I was saving babies all day, and I wasn't in the hospital. I was trying to save Matt. So now Matt was gone. My job was gone. And I just felt like I was drowning. I was drowning in nothingness. I'm a type A person, I'm a fixer. And I thought, why am I even here? Why don't you just take me? Because I've got nothing to give to anyone. And I started getting angry. And people would say, well, you should be angry at Matt. Look at what he did to you. Look at what he did to your life. And I'm like, oh, I'm not angry at Matt. I'm angry at everything I went through with him, from the insurance industry to the treatment facilities to the detox facilities to the doctors and nurses who got him hooked on these drugs. That's where I'm angry. So one day I decided I was going to go see our attorney general, because I had found scripts of Matt that were, I can't even tell you the amount of Percocet he was being given every month, and methadone, by these pill pushing, doctors. So I took copies of them, and I also had reported them to the Delaware Board of Medicine, thinking I was doing the right thing. And to my shock, the Board of Medicine thought that their prescribing methods were fine. So I was like, okay, are you getting a cut of their money? I mean, I was really getting crazy now, because I'm thinking, are you not seeing what I'm seeing? They're pushing pills like they're Skittles, and you guys are just going to turn a blind eye. So I called Matt Dunn, who was the attorney general then, and I made an appointment to go into his office. And I took all this information that I had. And it's funny, Delaware really is a small state. I walked into his office, and he came out and he looked at me and he goes, oh, you don't remember me, do you? And I'm like, oh, should I? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you took care of my boys in the NICU. And I was like, oh, no.
Wow.
I'm like, was I good, or did you like me? And he goes, you
Obviously,
were,
you were good. He remembered you.
I know. He goes, you were great. He
Either
goes,
that or
you,
you were horrible. That's the only way you were ever
I
famous.
know. And I'm like, should I leave now? Do you even want to just shut the door in my face? It's fine. But no, he was like, no, you were great. He goes, you taught me so much. And he goes, you would always calm my nerves. And, and it was really kind of fun.
That's
So
cool.
we sat down and I showed him everything that I had. And he was just blown away. He was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So that kind of started my advocacy training. Um, he took the scripts and we eventually did get that pill pushing practice closed. So then he called me and he said, are
Which
you
saved
ready?
God knows how many lives, I just want to say.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
And, he called me one day and he goes, are you ready to do this? And I said, I am so ready. And it's funny because I never spoke in public before. Um, you know, and he said, well, I'm calling a press conference and we're going to do this. So we talked about the pill pushing pill mill docs and how we could get legislation started to stop them. We talked about the insurance industry and how we could force Medicare, Medicaid to extend treatment times for people going into treatment. We talked about all of the things that the roadblocks that I ran up against when Matthew was trying to save his life. So he called a press conference, and I'll never forget that day. We were down in Dover in Legislative Hall, and I'm thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't. And it was like something came over me when he said, okay, you're on. And I stood up there and I just spilled my guts and told Matt's story. And so many people were just so responsive and horrified at the same time at what really is happening in the real world. When you have someone who has a disease and trying to find treatment, you're trying to find a bed, you're trying to get them somewhere safe, and the hell that you go through. And it just kind of started the ball rolling. So he then introduced me to a lot of the senators and a lot of the House members in Legislative Hall. And we just started working together to get these bills drafted. And I can tell you, I spent years down in Legislative Hall. We worked on 6 bills. And thank you, God, they all got passed. And Delaware, we now have the opioid impact fee bill, which any pharmaceutical company that sends opioids into Delaware, they are charged a fee because we needed the money to help with treatment, to help with everything. And your mother-in-law, Kathleen Jennings, the Attorney General now, was just phenomenal in helping with all of this and supporting everything that we did. And then when all these bills were passed, it got a little quiet, and I thought, well, what am I up against now? What can I do now? And then I remembered one thing that really irked me. Matt was down in Florida at a so-called sober living home when he relapsed. And rather than sending him to a treatment facility, to the ER, to a detox, the owner of the sober home dumped him at the Boca Inn, a motel, at 2:30 in the morning. Never called me, never did anything. Matthew died there in that motel at 10:05. And I thought, I wonder if this happens here in Delaware. So I started doing some research. And as shocked as I was, it was happening here in Delaware. And Florida was horrible. Philly was horrible. Ohio was horrible. Every state that I did some research in, this was what was happening. Sober home operators did not have to be licensed. They did not have to be regulated. They could just buy a property or rent a property, put a shingle on the door and say they were a sober home, and then charge people $400 a week and provide nothing, provide no meetings, provide no support, provide no peer support, anything at all like that. And they were absolutely kicking people out in the middle of the night to the streets with the clothes on their back, with no support, no care plan, nothing, just out of this house because you used. So I took probably a year and I was doing all this crazy research. I flew to Florida and I talked to John Lehman of FAR. I went to Philly and I talked to Fred Way of PAR. And I spoke to a lot of people on the phone and legislation and different states. And they all concluded the same thing, that something needed to be done. So I compiled all this information and I had probably this thick of a file. And I called Valerie Longhurst, who is my House representative. And I asked her if she'd meet me for coffee. So we met over at Bob Evans. And I just kind of shoved the research across the table. And now she knew me from the other bills. So, we did have a relationship. And I said, she goes, "What's this?" I said, "Well, read it." So she started reading it and she said, "You've got to be kidding me." And I said, "No, I'm not. I wish I was." So she said, "You know what? We're going to work together and we're going to fix this." Well, it took 3 years of, oh my goodness, back and forth, back and forth. Nobody wanted to be regulated. Nobody wanted to be held accountable. They just wanted to use people as disposable income. And it was crazy, the amount of opposition that we got. And, we just kept fighting and forging ahead. And then we'd have to stop. And then we'd have one bill written and, nobody wanted to pass it or we tweaked it. It took 3 years. 3 years of my life fighting for this bill, going down to Leg Hall, speaking before the Senate and the House. And, Jeremy, I got to the point where I thought, you know what? Nobody can hurt me anymore the way I've been hurt with losing Matt. So say what you want to say. Throw all the crap that you have to throw at me. And you know what? It's going to bounce right off me because we have got to get this done. And I swear it was by the grace of God because I finally started to give up. And then one day Val called me and she said, "Okay, we're going to do this again. We're going to work on this bill. We have more support now. We're garnering support. Get down to Leg Hall. I need you down here." So once again, the ball started. It was finally June the 30th of last year, the last day that they were in session. The bill went to the Senate. And then there was some, scuttlebutt going on. And I thought, oh, no, 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 no. We can't wait till next year. We've got to get this going. So finally, we got it through the Senate. And then it went to the House. And there was still some opposition going back and forth. So finally, I took a break. I went over to a restaurant there just to get something to eat because I was starving. I'd been there already 6 hours. And Joanna Champney from DSAM came over and because she was down there fighting with us. And I remember we just ordered and we just sat down and my text things and it's Representative Carrie Harris who was on the bill. She goes, get back here. They're gonna call it. So we rushed back over to Leg Hall, sat in on the House hearing, and it passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate. And that day, I think I just bust out crying because I just could not believe that we finally did it. We finally did it. And the thing that means the most to me is the bill is named the Matthew D. Klosowski Act after my son, Matt. And we are now in the process of regulating sober homes. It has started. They have started the first state alliance of recovery residences because of the bill. And they are now starting to certify homes in Delaware, which I just think of all the bills, I think this is the one that's really going to save lives because, people are going to be held accountable. You cannot just throw people out in the street because they've had a relapse. You have to care for them. Yeah. You have to get them somewhere safe. And, that was like the biggest thing I think I could have ever done to leave a legacy for Matt.
Well, I haven't heard anything more inspiring than that since having all these conversations. I'm sure everybody watching this will be really, really, really moved. Thank you for the countless hours, days, years of your life that you've spent advocating and trying to improve the lives of sick people.
It became my passion. I mean, it just became my passion. I think I spent more time in Dover than I did at home. And, my husband, he's like, why don't you just get an apartment down there? Because, or stay in a hotel instead of driving back and forth every day. But, I drive home and the one person that I wanted to share all this with was Matt. And he wasn't here. So I would talk to him all the way home. I'd cry, I'd yell, or, if I was having a bad day, I was just like, and I know people were probably looking at me like, oh my God, that woman's talking to herself in her car, stay away. But
everybody always assumes you're on the phone.
I mean, it was my way to decompress after a disappointing day, or a day to celebrate after a phenomenal day, But it was really, it was an experience.
I think it takes a certain kind of person to identify, when something is wrong, and then realize that, that there can be a solution, and then to fight for the solution like you did. And, thank God for you. Thank God for that. And you've had a major impact, I think, for people that are in recovery here in my home state. And, I know that the network for Into Light just keeps on growing, and I'm really proud that these video conversations that I'm having with people are gonna, it'll get sent out to everybody that's been through the project, and then it'll go up on YouTube, and it'll go on to our social media, and it'll be out there. And I just never know kind of where these conversations are going to go, or who they're going to reach, or who they're going to inspire. Maybe this conversation we're having now will inspire somebody else to do something similar in their state.
Yes, I hope so. I hope so, because too. You need to turn your grief into purpose. That's the way I've survived. Is I couldn't just let Matt become a statistic. I needed to right the wrongs for him and for people that are now going through this whole cycle of having a child, that is addicted to drugs. You have to help people learn from your mistakes, from things you didn't do right when your child was alive, and try to fix all the wrongs that you saw. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I thought, you're either going to love me or you're going to hate me. And I really don't care, but we need to call this out. We need to make these things right. We can't lose more people. Thank you.
I was so happy you brought up Joanna. Joanna is really the reason that she really funded the Delaware exhibit. Her office funded the Delaware exhibit. Not only did her office fund the Delaware exhibit, but her office has purchased 2 continuing the conversation kits, so that the exhibit can also continue being shown. It's going to be happening at Delaware State University. I know it's going to be in Kent and Sussex County as well. And I'm so grateful for her. And I've gone back and forth with her office, and I need to bring that back up because I want to have a conversation with her as well. But man, I'm very grateful for her as well for, believing so much in the power of what, Teresa and Barbara have started here and are doing. And I'm hearing from everybody that Into Light is different, within the world of activism and organizations that are trying to kind of change the conversation. I think I'm with you. It's so important that there's a face and a story, to go along with the staggering numbers of people that are losing.
Absolutely.
Because if it's just a number, then all of us can be distracted or oblivious or whatnot. But when there are neighbors, and there are children, and our brothers, and our sisters, it's very, very different. It's very different. And it's very hard to ignore. And one of my favorite conversations I've had recently is with Debbie Simon, who was a mother in Florida. And I asked her, I said, was there anybody in your life that, had their opinion changed, by the exhibit. They went from being ashamed to understanding more. And she said, yeah, my husband. And I was like, no way. That's
Wow.
incredible to think about that. This boy's father, went into that exhibit ashamed of his son, and came out of that exhibit with a different understanding and a real love and compassion.
Wow.
And it just gave me chills. It really gave me a
Yeah.
chill. And
That's testimony to the power of that exhibit.
yeah, absolutely.
That really is.
So I'm sure that, I love to give everybody an opportunity to talk about Teresa and Barbara, but they always ask for me to edit that part out of the conversations because they're so humble. But, I do want to give you an opportunity, if you want to say something, on the record, so to speak, about what it was like to work with Teresa, and, to just say anything about the project that you'd like to before we, kind of wrap things up.
Teresa, it was incredible, the conversations that we had. I had never really met her in person, but I felt like I knew her because we shared the grief of losing a son. And, when she told me what the project was about and why she did it, I just admired her, because anybody can just curl up in a ball and just not do anything and just grieve. But here she is bringing families together, doing this beautiful awareness project and going into so many states and just, like we talked about dehumanizing addiction. Like you said, with a number, people can blow off a number and think, oh, it'll never happen. It'll never happen to my son. But when you look at that picture of my son is your son. I didn't think it would happen to my son either. And yet Teresa didn't think it would happen to her son. And yet it did. And rather than just shutting down, she's opened up a beautiful opportunity for parents to share their stories, to bond, and know that we're not alone and that we will support each other and our children will always be remembered. The Into Light project is something that touched me so deeply. I will never forget. I will never forget that day walking in that room alone and just feeling like they were surrounding me, like they were there with me. And, it's funny, I was asked to speak to a group of school students up there. And so I took them into the auditorium and then we toured the exhibit. And to watch those students read the narratives and to look at the pictures, I knew they had been touched. They weren't laughing, they weren't joking, they weren't poking each other. They were absorbed into what they were seeing. And, talking about, how it can happen to anyone, how it can happen to your neighbor, your brother. They opened up about people that they did know that were struggling. And I think it was a real eye opener. So, what Teresa has done is like open the box and just let everybody have a chance to see that people that have died, that are struggling, are beautiful human beings, and they need never be forgotten. They need to be honored because of what they've been through.
Well, I already know that's going to make her cry, but that's all right. It's okay. It's all right.
Sorry.
Before I forget, I wanted you to also talk a little bit about a hug for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it all started really actually one night. Matt was going through withdrawal and I couldn't get a bed. There was no detox beds. There were no treatment beds. And I didn't want this to happen because I've seen it happen and it was really ugly. So I drove him into the city. I know, I'm crazy nurse mom, and went looking for drugs. But when your child has gone through this, you're desperate and you will do anything to stop it. And, even though I knew better, I thought, well, what choice do I have? And we were driving in the city and I'm praying and like, oh God, please help us. And he told me to stop the car. And it was in the winter. And I said, you know what? I'm not stopping here. And he goes, Mom, stop. So I stopped and he jumped out of the car. And there was this man standing on the corner with just a t-shirt on, and he was absolutely freezing. So Matt got out of the car and took off his coat and he gave it to the man. And he jumped back in the car and I was like, Matt, what are you doing? And he said, Mom, I have more coats at home. This man has nothing. And it really kind of put me in awe, like, wow, that was incredible. And then after he died, it was probably the December, he died in January, and that December, I was just so grief stricken. And that image came to me of Matt getting out of my car and giving that gentleman his jacket. And I thought, what do I miss? I miss his hugs. Matt was a big guy and he'd wrap me in these big hugs. And I thought, a hug for Matt. And that December, I got backpacks and I filled them with socks and different clothing and essential foods and toiletries. And I went down into the city, believe it or not, by myself. And I opened up my trunk of my car and everybody just came. And it was the most profound experience I have ever had in my life. I was not afraid. I heard so many, God bless you, ma'am. God bless you. Thank you so much. I just was like, okay, this is what I got to do. I've got to do this. So I then met with professionals and I got backpacks that are now, they say a hug for Matt on them. And I do get some donations, but mostly it's my husband and I, and that's fine because it's something I do from my heart. But we do it all the time. I've been doing it for 9 years. And I have so many organizations that take them all over the state of Delaware. Actually, they're on their way to Oklahoma now because I have a friend that does disaster relief and he asked me if I could help. So I made up a bunch of backpacks and Narcan, of course, and gave him that. So yeah, it's how I want people to know that even though maybe your family's disowned you, even if you feel that nobody cares about you, I care, and I will be there to help you. And whatever you've done, it's okay because you're still a worthy human being and you need to eat and you need to have clean socks, and you just need to know that somebody cares. And that's really how it really started. And I've given out 150 backpacks so far this year. And I just love when I see somebody carrying my backpack. It just blows my mind that, hey, they knew they were loved. Or somebody will say, oh, I saw somebody had your backpack. And it's really touching. And I put a little card in there with a picture of Matt that says a hug from Matt. And on the back of it, there's a heart and it says you are loved. And I put that in every backpack. So I just want people to know that, even though your family might have disowned you, it's because they don't understand. And don't ever give up on yourself because life can be beautiful and you just have to find your way there.
I love you. What an incredible, legacy you've created from that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, but I if these things get too long, people don't watch them. So we should.
I know.
We should bring it to a close. I always want to take a moment just to remind people who are watching that one of the best things that they can do to help this project is to join the Circle of Light at any level, whether it be $2 a month, $5 a month, it doesn't matter. They can always change it. They can always, end that, up it, whatever. It's very flexible. It's very easy. And, it's really Circle of Light members that help make these videos possible as well. And so that just wanted to sneak that in there at the end. And MaryBeth, thank you so much for everything, not just talking to me, but for everything you've done and continue doing. I'm very inspired by you and very grateful for you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And I absolutely love this portrait. You've given me the greatest gift ever. I look at it every day and yeah, I tear up, but that's my mat. You gave me my mat, and there's no greater gift.
And that means an incredible amount to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a really good rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
I'm sure I'll talk to you soon at some point.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.